Hello everybody, it's Stefano from SAP. So what we'll be doing today is we'll be going over the modular structure and we'll be using it within our fundamental-ngx application. So to begin, there's two things you need to know. There's two libraries. So there's the actual library and then there's the documentation library. So the library over here is going to be our actual components that are going to be reused throughout the application, and our documentation library is used for the website. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a new module within our library folder. So what we'll do is we'll type in, first of all, we'll go to our library folder, so cd libs, and then we're going to type in ngg for generate module to generate a module, and then the path that you want to generate it into. So this is going to be our source path, poster. Perfect. The next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a component and attach it to that module. So ng gc core src lib poster dash dash module equals core. So now we're going to put the path of that module that we're attaching it to. So lib poster module. So if you look here, you also have to attach two dashes and the equal for the path. So we're going to create that component, which is being generated right here. Perfect. So once that's been created, what we need to do is we need to add an exports array. So in this case, when you have a smaller module and you're going to be using it elsewhere, which is usually the case in big time applications, what you're going to do is you'll have these smaller modules created in another directory, and then you'll import them in your bigger application module. So in this case, what we'll do is we're going to list a list of exports. It's an array, and it's going to export the poster component. So it's saying when I export this module, I also basically want to export this poster component, because keep in mind, even though it's a smaller module, it doesn't necessarily mean it only will have one component attached. It might have several. So any components that you want to attach to this module, you'll list them in your exports. Next thing we need to do is go in the poster.component ts file, so the Typescript, and what we'll simply do is just change the selector to fd poster. Anything Angular fundamental-ngx related will begin with an fd within its selectors. So now that we have the smaller module created, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use it into our bigger module. In order to do that, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to need to actually create a new folder in our documentation directory. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go in that folder. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to do cd ... So we're going to just get into that folder. So let's actually do this. Let's work. Perfect. So now that we're just in the general directory, this is the path. So you could do cd apps / docs / source / app / documentation / component docs. And then once we're there, these are all the lists. We're going to create a folder for the poster. So that's now been created. We'll also go inside it, and there's nothing there. So at this point, we need to create a couple folders. First thing is going to be an examples folder. And the second thing that we're going to create is a poster header component. So ngGC poster header. It's going to create us a component. Once that's been created, we need to generate a couple files. Right now, we need to create a couple files. So the first one is going to be our actual poster doc. So touch stands for create a file, basically. And then you're going to do poster docs dot component dot ts. And then we're going to create the HTML as well. So this is what's there so far. We also need to create a file in the examples folder. So we'll go into that folder. And at that point, we are going to create a poster example component .ts. We don't need the HTML, and I'll explain to you after as to why. So touch, don't forget the touch keyword, example.component. And once we've done that, we have pretty much created all the folders and files necessary that we need to advance. So at that point, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, we're going to take this piece of code over here. And this file, all of this code, all of this documentation will be available to you on the GitHub. So over here, if we copy paste this code from the step 8, from the import to the export class part, we're going to go ahead and paste that in our poster example. So we're going to go in our documentation, we're going to go in poster, examples, and then we're going to go in the TypeScript file. Also, keep in mind, if you just want to use the VS Code, you can create the folders and files here directly, but for the components, it is best to use the terminal. It's quicker that way. So we're going to paste that there, and a couple things happen. So I'll explain to you what's going on right now, what we just pasted. So the first thing is an import. We're going to be importing the main component class from the Angular core library. Secondly, the next thing that happens is we're going to use that component as a directive. So basically, this component is like a class, and what it's going to do is it's going to give us a couple properties. First one being a selector. So any other time we'll use this component outside of this document, so like in another HTML file, all you need to do is use the FD poster example, and it's going to render whatever is used in this component. In this case, the only thing that's used is the FD poster selector. This is an inline template because it doesn't say template URL. So if you want it to be inline, you put the keyword template with backticks, not quotes, but backticks. And the issues that it's having right now, it's saying, well, you're telling us to use the FD poster tag, the selector, but we don't really have it. So in order for us, and this is a very good concept in modular structure, for us to actually be able to use this smaller module that we use here, although we do need to export it there, we also need to import it in our current larger module. So for us, that would be in the documentation module.ts. If we go in there and we go to our list of imports, we'll see that what we're doing, you have two choices actually. So the first thing you could do is you could put it in the import at the top, and then you could put it in as a poster module in your list of imports. The second thing you could do is, here we do have a fundamental-ngx core, basically like it's an import, and if we go to it, what you'll see is that there's a bunch of modules. That's where all of our library modules have been put, so it's better to group them like that and just have it as one import instead of importing this directly in that larger module. It's a lot of code and it's a lot less organized. So this way we could keep your code more structured, more organized. So what we're going to do is over here we're going to put import poster module, then you're going to say the directory. So from poster module. So we've imported that there, and then we're going to go ahead and add it to our list of imports. Perfect. So now that we've imported that, if we go back in the component, save it up, that red error disappears. This one you don't have to worry about. It's just an error with the VS Code. It's a little glitch in the system. Alright, so now that we've done that and we've gone over the poster example TypeScript file, what we'll do is we'll go into the poster docs component TypeScript file, and we'll go ahead and copy paste this code, and I'll explain to you what that code does as well. So in our poster docs component TypeScript file, paste that. So a couple of things to note here. For starters, once again, we're importing the component from the main library, the Angular core library. Second thing, we're also importing the example file, which is basically going to be, it's like a helper from the code example component. And we also import everything as a poster HTML. So this is like a variable from our poster example component.ts. So what this is going to do, and I'll show you later in the demo, is that it's going to import all of this code as raw code, and it's going to use it afterwards. And here what's being done in the class that we're going to be exporting as well is that you are going to, this is no longer needed. What we'll need is a variable to use after which, and the example file is going to be an array with two properties basically, two elements in that array. It's going to be the language, which is HTML, and the code that you're going to be using. So in this case it's the poster HTML. This is from the raw code that we're importing. So once we've gone ahead and used all of that, I'm just going to save this, go back. So the next thing we're going to copy paste is the code in our poster docs component. So then when we're doing this, what we're going to do is a couple things. So let's actually first paste the poster header component because it does go along with the poster doc. So if we go in our poster header and we go in the Typescript and we go ahead in the HTML file, sorry about that, there we go. So this we're going to paste as a poster header. So a couple things once again to note here in the HTML file. So the header and description selectors are just custom fundamental in the fundamental library things that we imported. It's just selectors here, so it's just going to style it out a bit more. And if you go in, you'll see that this is going to be displayed within the description selector. There's a ng content that needs to be used, so it's going to be using that. So after which, you need to notice two things. The first thing is the router outlet, and the second thing is the FD header tabs. The main thing that's important here is the router outlet is just going to copy basically the children components, and it's going to place them there. So any children components that I will show you in the router that the router is going to generate are going to be generated underneath. One of which is the poster docs component. So go ahead, copy paste the code here for the poster docs in the poster docs HTML. So we'll go there, poster docs component HTML, which is here, paste that there. So a couple things, this FD docs section title is basically just a title with a link, and that's going to go ahead and it's going to apply a link. So whenever you click on it, it's going to drop down. It's just a regular selector from the fundamental library. This FD poster example is going to be the example shown for this component that we generated. If you have several examples, you could have them in your example folder and have a couple of component example files. So let's say, imagine you had several of them here. You could just give the several examples here, and these would be your selectors for your other examples. You'd have to make sure it has a different name, of course, and this would have been the code for the demo, which I'll also show. So next, a very important concept. So as I said before, if you have a smaller module being used in a larger module, you import and export it using the arrays. But the thing is, if you're importing, well, you wouldn't be importing it. If you're using a component that's within the same directory within a module, the way to do that is you got to declare it in your modules. So before, for example, if we look in the library, if we go in this Typescript component, the module, in our declarations we had our poster component. So what does that mean? In this case, in our documentation file, right, we added a poster docs component, a poster header component. So in this case, what we're going to have to do is we're also going to and a poster example component. So what we're going to do is we're going to import those in our documentation module. So if we go in our documentation module, we're going to put those at the top of our imports just so that it can make the link to the path, and then we'll add them to the declarations. So let's go docs component because we do want to keep it in order. So you'll go down to the docs component. There we go. All right, here, LMNOP here. So the P is here. So you can go ahead after pop over, we'll add the poster. So we'll do poster header component, and then we're going to say the desired path. So in our case, it's going to be component docs, poster, poster header, and poster header component. That's the first one. Duplicate. Alright, so that means we've already imported it. Let's go take a look as to where it's been imported. It's been imported at the bottom. Alright. And a second thing you could do is if you actually add them in the declarations, it'll automatically add them. So if we go header component, just make sure poster is not there first. Shouldn't. Oh, okay, so it's been added automatically, but we'll go ahead and we'll add them manually. So if we go in the header components, and we search for poster header, it won't be there. So we'll go ahead, we'll add it ourselves right in the alphabetical order needed. So in the list of declarations is where we'll add this one. Header component. And here we go. In the list of declarations, there's going to be a bunch of header components grouped together. If we scroll down, here we go. So we'll go ahead, we'll import that, we'll put it in our list of declarations there. Poster header component. Next thing we'll do is we'll add the example component in the list of declarations. So here you have all your example components. So we'll go alphabetically once again. Is there any others? Yes, there are right here. So we'll do the popover, right underneath popover, we'll do poster example component. And then it's going to auto import. And then if we do the docs component, which is the last one, here we go. So we'll go once again in alphabetical order and we'll add our poster docs component. Combo box, let's go alphabetically, and where would the docs be? Alright, so we'll just add it here after our poster docs, our poster header component. Alright, so now that that's all been imported, what we'll go ahead and do is we'll add some custom HTML in our actual component in our root, but first what we'll do is we'll actually go over the routing. So the first thing we'll do is we'll go ahead, we'll copy paste this path. So where's the path? The path would be in the router. So if we go in our router, so in the routes, there's a bunch of routes. And when I was saying the router outlet uses these paths, so what's going to happen, let me just paste the poster router and then I'll be able to explain it to you guys. So it's going to be an object, so it's going to be in between curly braces and then comma. Perfect. And there you go. So it's like all the others. So when we go into the poster router part in the documentation routes, these are all the routes. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to go ahead and we are going to import them. So we need to import the poster header component. If you click here, it's going to add all missing imports. So it's going to import those two. And what happens is, by default, when the path is poster, it's going to load up the poster header component, which we had created before. So where is that? That should be poster docs, poster header. It's going to load this up. Now, as discussed, there's a router outlet. So this is automatically loaded, and two other things can possibly get loaded. So if the URL has nothing after poster, it's going to load the poster docs. If it has API after it, it's going to load the API component, and this is data that needs to get passed to it. The error is saying that we need to import basically the part of the API for the poster. So we'll go ahead and we'll add that to the API file. So we'll copy that. Once again, not to worry, this code will be made available to you in the documentation. So after that, we'll just add the poster to this list. Poster component, and at that point the error will go away in the routes. And the last step, as we said, is that we're going to import. Once we've put the URL, we'll be able to put in the image source. So we'll go ahead, we'll add that URL in our list of paths. So URL, and that is going to be in the file called documentation.component.ts. So if we go here in our list of files, in our documentation folder, if we scroll a bit up, it's going to be somewhere there, or a shortcut, you could just click Command P, documentation.component.ts. It's going to open that file for you, and we're going to add the URL for the poster. So just go ahead and put that in there. So we're going to put poster, and the name is poster. So what this is doing is it's basically saying when the URL has poster, the name is also poster with a capital P, and that's going to get applied in the URL. Just want to make sure there's no errors. poster is not included inside a module. So what this is saying, once again, is it's saying that it's not in the documentation. So let's just go ahead and double check that. So it is there. And is this in the list of declarations? Yes, it is. So if we go ahead, save this. So we just probably have to save these files so it understands. Yeah, that's what's going on. So we just had to save the file so it understood that the changes had been made. And at that point, the last step is to go ahead and change up your component that you imported from your library how you like. What we'll do, we'll go ahead and we'll add an image. So we'll just put a random image in there. So here we go. So we're going to go ahead, save that. Now, a couple of things to know. Because there's an API section, what you'll actually need to do is go in the package JSON file. There's a build docs directive. So go in the terminal, put npm run build docs. What that's going to do is that's going to build the documentation locally on your computer. And afterwards, we're going to run the ngserf so we can get a idealistic view of what the app is actually going to look like. So let's just let that build. So we'll just go over all the steps while that builds actually. So go like that. And all right. So stepwise. So first couple steps, we created the module and we linked the component to it of the smaller poster component. We added the poster component to the exports array and changed the selector. The next thing we did is we created a poster directory in the library folder. Not in the library folder, but in the documentation folder, and we added all of the folders such as the poster header, example folders, and then we also added the files that were needed. Next thing is we added the code for the template. So in this import, the main thing was the FD poster that got put with a template for the two backticks. And then after which, what we did is we imported in our modules, we imported the smaller component from our library folder by going in the fundamental-ngx core file and adding it to its list of imports, because that would indirectly import it in our documentation module file. After which, we copy-pasted this code in the poster docs component TypeScript file. And what that simply did is it gave the raw content that would be pasted for the demo. And after which, what we did in the poster docs and the actual HTML, we used this TypeScript file within, and we created, when it's on the default path, this would be the view that would be shown. So it had the selectors of the headers, the descriptions, and then it also has the FD poster example. Keep in mind what this does right here is it shows the poster example HTML that was linked to the TypeScript, whether it was inline or not. After which, we created the poster header component, the HTML doc. What we did with that is we copy pasted this code. The main thing was the router outlet, which shows all of its children. Added the declarations of the poster example component and the poster header component, while adding this to the list of imports at the top of the file. In the API files, TypeScript. So that's done. So we'll just do ngserf. In the API files TypeScript, what we went ahead and did is we added a poster element to it, and after which we configured the router to accept when the path had the poster what to do with it. So the children are here, which had a default path and an API path. And as well, don't forget you have to import the components for this and this, for the poster header components and poster docs component. Make sure you have those imported. Lastly, the two steps were to add the URL to the list of URLs in the documentation.component.ts file, and in the this is your choice. If you want to modify your basic component, you go in its HTML and you'll modify that. So if we go ahead and let's say we go in the localhost, this is the page. We'll go down to our poster component. So this is the default thing, and as shown, this is what I meant by the demo code. So it simply it received the raw code from the FD poster example TypeScript file, which was simply this. So it shows what it does, and then if we go to the API, it's going to show all of the API things used with Angular for our component creation for the poster. I want to thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, leave a comment, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.